Sophie had always dreamed of her wedding day, the excitement of starting a new life with someone she loved, and moving into a home she could call her own. When she first arrived at her husband's family home, nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood, everything seemed perfect. The sun filtered through the trees, birds chirped in the distance, and the house itself looked warm and inviting. Sophie felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. This was the beginning of her future, she thought. At first, everything went smoothly. Her mother-in-law greeted her with a warm smile, and Sophie was eager to help around the house. She hung up coats, folded laundry, and unpacked dishes, telling herself that making a good impression was part of being a loving and responsible new family member. Each task felt small and manageable. Each yes felt natural. Sophie wanted to be appreciated, to be loved, to belong. But slowly, the tasks began to pile up. Breakfast preparation, laundry, cleaning, running errands for relatives, assisting her husband with small chores, all of it fell on her. The family didn't ask for it explicitly at first, they assumed. They expected her availability. And Sophie, wanting to be kind, polite, and helpful, said yes every time. At work, Sophie's performance began to slip. She had a remote job she loved, but her morning meetings were missed, deadlines postponed, and emails ignored. Her hobbies fell by the wayside. Weekend calls with her sister became impossible. Her fitness routine disappeared. Yet, she told herself it was worth it. If I make everyone happy, I'll be happy, she thought. Days turned into weeks. Sophie was constantly exhausted. Her mornings started before anyone else was awake, and her nights ended long after everyone else had gone to bed. She cooked, cleaned, comforted, and accommodated, ignoring her own needs entirely. And still, there was no recognition, no gratitude, no simple acknowledgement. She became invisible, her own life slipping quietly away while she tended to everyone else's. One evening, during a heavy rainstorm, the household hosted a small gathering for extended relatives. Sophie ran tirelessly from room to room, preparing food, tidying tables, and entertaining guests. The storm outside mirrored her exhaustion, pounding relentlessly against the windows as if reminding her of the chaos she endured daily. She paused for a moment, leaning against the counter, and realized that she didn't even remember what it felt like to relax. The smiles she offered to others were automatic, the gratitude she hoped for never came. It was that night, alone in her room after the guests had gone, that Sophie felt the first pang of clarity. She looked at her reflection in the window, rain streaking down the glass. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Her shoulders were tense, her eyes tired, and her smile forced. Somewhere along the way, she had disappeared, swallowed by the endless needs of those around her. Desperate for guidance, Sophie reached out to her Aunt Linda, a woman she had always admired for her strength and independence. On a video call, Linda listened quietly as Sophie recounted her exhaustion, her sense of invisibility, and her fear of letting anyone down. Finally, Linda spoke, "Sophie, kindness without boundaries becomes slavery. You can't pour from an empty cup. Protect your time, protect your energy, protect your peace. You are allowed to say no." That conversation ignited something in Sophie. For the first time in weeks, she considered the possibility that she didn't have to be available for everyone, all the time. That maybe, just maybe, she deserved her own space, her own priorities, her own life. It was the beginning of a journey she hadn't realized she needed, the journey of reclaiming herself. The next morning, Sophie faced the ultimate test. Her mother-in-law requested that she prepare breakfast for the entire household, from pancakes and scrambled eggs to fruit salad and coffee. In the past, Sophie would have smiled, nodded, and silently pushed herself to exhaustion. But today, a small voice inside her refused to be ignored. "I'm sorry," she said calmly, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. "I need to focus on my work this morning. I can help after lunch." Her mother-in-law froze, spoon in hand, eyes wide with surprise. Sophie expected anger, but none came. Instead, the house fell into a tentative silence, as if holding its breath. For the first time, Sophie felt a spark of relief. Over the next few days, Sophie began testing this newfound courage. When her sister-in-law asked her to help with laundry, Sophie replied with firmness and kindness, explaining she had prior commitments. She expected resistance, arguments, even disappointment. But each time, the family adapted. The house didn't collapse. People began managing their own chores. And Sophie started noticing something she hadn't felt in months, a sense of control over her own life. It wasn't easy. The first few refusals came with guilt. Doubts crept in during quiet moments. She worried she might upset her husband or alienate her in-laws. But every time she reminded herself of Aunt Linda's words, "Protect your time. Protect your peace," the guilt eased. She realized that saying no wasn't selfish, it was necessary. As Sophie continued setting boundaries, small victories emerged. Her husband, Tom, who had remained silent during her overwork, began to understand. He noticed how exhausted she had been and recognized the toll her constant yes had taken. For the first time, he helped with breakfast, offered to run errands, and even encouraged Sophie to take time for herself. Even the mother-in-law began adjusting. She still asked for Sophie's help occasionally, but no longer assumed it as a given. And Sophie learned to say yes, only when she wanted to, not because she felt obligated. Each small boundary restored a piece of her identity and confidence. Sophie returned to her fitness class and found joy in small routines she had abandoned. She laughed with friends during video calls, prioritized her work projects, and spent quiet evenings reading or simply relaxing. She discovered that when she valued her own needs, her energy wasn't depleted, her relationships weren't strained, and her happiness began to return. The shift wasn't always smooth. Some family members murmured, showing irritation at first. But as Sophie remained firm and consistent, resistance faded. She noticed an unexpected change. The household became more self-sufficient. People stopped relying on her for every small task. Tom and even her sister-in-law began handling responsibilities without reminders. And Sophie realized that when she protected herself, others learned to respect her time. For the first time, Sophie felt seen, not for how much she could do for everyone else, but for who she truly was. Her energy returned. Her priorities returned. Her laughter and peace returned. She began to recognize herself again, the woman she had almost lost in the endless cycle of saying yes. Sophie understood something fundamental: she didn't need anyone's approval to value herself. Kindness without boundaries leads to invisibility, but courage to protect one's own life brings respect, health, and happiness. She had discovered the power of saying no. And while she still helped her family, it was now by choice, not obligation. She had reclaimed her life, her work, her joy, her priorities, and in doing so, she had reminded everyone around her that her presence was not infinite, but valuable. Sophie's journey was a reminder for everyone: being kind doesn't mean being available all the time. Helping others is noble, but it should never come at the cost of your own life, your own happiness, or your own identity. True respect, from yourself and from others, begins when you protect what is yours: your time, your energy, and your peace of mind.